Hey everybody, it's Sheila, and as you can tell on the screen, hello, my name is Sheila, and I'm the digitizer behind Designs by Baby Moon, and I use Stitch Artist embroidery design software for digitizing most of the projects that I make. And so I wanted to show you how I made this hello, my name is patch, because Brilliance just came out with this fun new border that you can see on my screen. I have two patches on my screen. One I did with a regular satin border, which is how I usually do a patch. But Brilliance just added this fun marrowed look patch border to the most recent update. So this is April 9th, 2021. I think it came out last week, but I finally got it downloaded to the computer that I use, and I just had a lot of fun playing with it today, so I just want to show you how I used it. So let's flip over to my software, and I'll show you what we got. Okay, so here's the patches. I've already digitized it, and what I want to do is just walk you through the steps that I used to create it. So let's open a new screen, and it's just such a fun thing. So I have Stitch Artist level 1, 2, and 3, and I also have Brilliance Essentials and Enthusiast loaded onto my computer. So you'll see those tools, various tools pop up. So let me just show you what I did. So one of my favorite tools is this little flyout button that I can use different shapes for, and I just click on a rectangle. My rectangle, the corner radius, just from the last project, which I think was this patch, has some nice rounded edges. So that I have a 4x4 hoop on the screen. I'm a little bit over 200% zoomed in, and that's what I generally like to do. I'm going to change my corner radius back to something nice and round. Let's do 20. That's nice. And I made a rectangle. So I'm going to take and I'm going to make a couple of copies of that rectangle over here in my object window. I'm going to just Control C, then Control V, and Control V a couple of times just so I have it. And this is our basic shape. This would be the shape of the whole entire patch as it is. Here's mine right here, so you can see it's a rounded rectangle. And you can change those shaped corners right here. You can make them a little bit tighter. You can make them a little bit, fuller if you wanted to. I just like the way that looks, just what your eye likes. So these are simply still almost like a vector shape. And so you don't have really any nodes to play with. They're just a shape. If you want to turn it into something where you can play with the nodes, you would simply select one of them. I've got 4 up here. And you would just right click on it. So that's with my right hand with my middle finger. And you would click Convert to Curve. And now you have some nodes that you can play with. To make this patch, there's a couple of different parts. So the first thing that I had on my patch is I had a placement stitch, so that I could see where on my stabilizer that I was going to put my patch material. So I'm going to go ahead and just I'm going to make one of those instances of the patch a single running stitch. 3 millimeters is good. I'm going to make sure that it ties off at the beginning and end, and I have a placement stitch. I'm going to start with pink because primarily I start all my designs with pink. I've just been doing it that way, and so that's what works. So I've got my placement stitch as the first run on my patch. The next thing that I want to do is these Hello, My Name Is stickers that you can buy are usually about half of the thing is filled with the Hello, My Name Is, and then the bottom half is open so that you can write your name with a Sharpie. That's how we do it at meetings. I thought this would be fun to make and wear, because maybe we're going to get to go to conferences or sewing classes or guilds or whatnot. I just thought it would be fun to have my own name tag with me. And so anyway, I'm going to make half of it red, or most of it red at the top in that patch area, and then leave the bottom half open. I'm intending to make these as I did these here on white material. I have it on white vinyl, but you could also use white twill or another patch specific material that you might be already using. So I tend to work on vinyl a lot, and so I tried it in a couple of different kinds of vinyl. My preferred way to use these would be to add a pin back on the back and just you glue that on with some E6000. So that's what my plan is with these patches. If you wanted to, you could make an iron-on patch that goes on your jacket or your vest or whatever you wear, if you want to do a patch like that. Okay, but let's go ahead and divide up the next block into something with nodes. So let's convert it to curve, and then let's put some extra nodes almost at the halfway point on either side. And I'm trying to just make sure I get those level. And I'm going to select both of those by clicking on them with the control key. So I've got both of them. And I'm using a Windows computer, so I would use control. And then when I have both of them selected in blue here, I'm going to use the right click button. Nope, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to select them both and then click break across. That's what I want to do. And that will divide that section basically in half. I don't need the bottom at all, so I'm going to just delete the bottom. And I just need this top area. Now my bottom line wasn't a clean cut all the way across, so I'm just going to drag it down until that bottom line is straight. You could also use line nodes, which would control how your line is. You could snap it to a horizontal if you wanted to, but this is good. This is pretty good to me. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to fill that area with the color in order to make the fill run nicely across the material that I'm using, which is vinyl or marine vinyl. I'm going to fill it with an angle that's about 45 degrees, 40 to 45 degrees, and I'm going to change my starts and stops so that this design will fill from this bottom right side back up to the left. And I have just learned by working with this particular product that's the way I like things to fill. I like them to fill it like the shape is filling, like I'm pouring paint into it, I'm pouring the stitches into it, and it feels nice, and it controls the stretch of the vinyl, because vinyl has a little bit of stretch. If you're working with patch material, you may want to change the settings on your angle slightly differently, but that's what I do for vinyl. And by doing so, you can see that there's no artifact, that this design, when we run it through the player, will fill nicely. I'm going to check my underlay. I like the density to be about 17 points, which is the default, and the inset to be at about 7 points as well. I have a contour and a perpendicular underlay on just to give this fill a nice amount of control underneath. Okay, and it's brown right now, but let's go ahead and change that color. And the Isochord color palette, let's find a nice red. Let's use Cardinal. That's a nice red. Okay, but because I still have it zoomed in to 218%, it does look a little patchy, but when you zoom out, let's go back out to about 100%, you can see that it's filled nicely. And because I've tested this out before, on this patch that I've already made, I used these exact same settings, and I got a beautiful fill. So you would need to test, based on your material, how you want your fill to work. That's our top half. If you needed to, you could just leave it here and then add your lettering and then be done with it for a patch. But I like this fill, and I'm going to add the lettering in already. So the way I added my lettering is I took a TrueType font from the collection of fonts that I have to use for embroidery, and I picked one. I typed in the word hello at the top, and then I found one that I liked the way it looked and that I was familiar with how it stitched when I applied lettering to it, but I'm not going to just apply lettering to it. So there are some things that I want to do to the font that I'll walk you through here. So let's try. I want to try something that I'm familiar with. And there are lots of lovely fonts that you could try. Lily Script one is a really nice font. And it has a nice even width, and so it's under controlled. So let's go with that. Now it brought the letters in all together as one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check that the nodes on the letters, let's move this up a little bit, and then we'll zoom back in so you can see. There we go. We can see that really well. Let's move that so we can really see what's going on here. I could just go ahead and apply a satin column to these letters, And that doesn't look half bad. Of course, we'd want that to be white. So let's assign the white color to those stitches. That actually looks really good. What I do want to is I want to check these nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and select each letter, and I can see that there are a lot of nodes on the letter, and I don't necessarily need that many nodes, especially on the ends and the insides of those curves. Sometimes if a font comes in and it has a lot of nodes, like right here, I'm concerned about this, it'll start doing weird things, and I don't want weird things to happen. I want the stitching to be kind of predictable. So I'm going to come in and I could edit these, or I could just simply use this edit or create design, no, create outline, and then reconstruct the outline, and that generally will get rid of most of the extra nodes, and so that actually did really well. I might remove a couple of these if I needed to. This is looking pretty good. There's not too many nodes around that top curve, which is good. The L's are good. That L is the same. I want them to be the same. I'm a little worried about this O here, so I'm going to add an extra O node there, and I'm going to change the shape just a bit so that it doesn't look so irregular. Okay, I like that a little bit. Delete that node out of there. That node looks like a cusp, so let's fix it so that it's not. And there's a couple of nodes right there. I don't know why. I'm going to get rid of that one. Let's change this one again so it's not so ridgy in there. I want it to be smooth. There we go. You can see how that one looks kind of triangular too. And it just means those handles on those curves they're doing some things that we're not real, I don't want them to. Okay, I can see now I can play with the handles and get that shape just the way I want it. So sometimes those nodes, they just do funny things. So let's kind of get this a little bit more regular. Pull this in a bit. That's better. Let's pull this out a bit so it looks more slanted. There we go, but our O is a nice shape and even all the way around. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's get it. There's a lot of little fiddling that you need to do when you're using a True Dot font. Okay, I'm going to click off of it, and now we see what we've got. That looks pretty good. So I would take and I would let that sit right here and see how I like it. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to do a little bit of squishing. So I want to squish it so it's taken up about, maybe about a little bit more than 50% of the height of that shape. I don't want to get too close to the edge because my patch border that we've just gotten to use in Embrilliance is a little bit thick. I mean, it's not a little bit thick. It's exactly the right size, but I don't want it to overlap my lettering any at all. So I want to make sure that I have a little bit of a distance between the border. If you're going to use a regular satin border, then you can get a little bit closer, but I found with this new patch edge that looks like a nice marrowed edge, like a marrow machine would make, it just takes up a little bit more room on the inside, but it's very, very nice and it's totally worth it. To do my name is, all I did was use the block lettering font that is already built into Embrilliance, and I like taking this font and doing some things to the stitches on the font. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change it. It comes in my software as a Madeira brand. I like to use Isacord, so I'm going to change it to Isacord, and then I'm going to change it to white, which is what the color I'm going to stitch it out in. So it'll be the same. And then I'm going to go look at the stitch properties of that font. Now this stitch, well, I need to change it to my name is first. So let's write my name is, let's use all capitals because that's what in my head, that's what the stickers say. My name is. Now we can change the stitches. So in the stitches, the default to this block font is tatami stitches. I want it to look more like a satin stitch. You could do all kinds of cool things with the lettering right here, but I'm going to change it to a satin stitch, more satin looking stitch. So I select none. I don't want to fill on it. If you wanted to make it look differently, if it was a little bit bigger, you could add all kinds of texture to it. At this small, nothing really happens, but just because it's my practice when I'm using a font like this that I want to look more like a satin stitch, I always double check and change it to satin. And that way in my working file, I have that already selected as satin, so that if I wanted to use it and blow it up big and make a giant thing, maybe I wanted to make a placemat or something, then those would look like satin, although that wouldn't be the right application of this, but you know what I mean. If they want them to look like satin now, I'll do it in the beginning, and that way I don't have to think about it later. Okay. I do not need, though, so it has there as a satin stitch font. I don't need any underlay, though, on either of these letterings that I've added. I don't need it on the lettering that I brought in that's native to Embrilliance. That's the native lettering. And I don't need any underlay on the lettering that I brought in from a True Type font. So I'm going to go ahead and unclick the underlay. In the hello, I'm going to do the same thing. Let's go back over here and make sure that in my underlay section, I don't have any underlay. The reason I don't need any underlay is because I have a really nice, thick, dense, pretty dense underlay already set in on the fill stitch and the red behind it. And so I don't need a lot of underlay now in these letters. So this letter, I need to turn off the create mode and just be able to move these letters up here. You can see that's a little too big is how they came in automatically. So I'm going to just squish them down to make them a little bit more squatty. Now let's back up and look at this. Hello, my name is. That looks really good to me. I'm really happy with that. One thing I didn't mention, and I want to go back and make sure I mention, on this fill stitch right here, you'll see that I have selected this travel edge. I don't always use the travel edge, but when I do use travel edge, it gives me nice clean borders without having to do a lot of extra work. This program does put in a little bit of more stitches around the edges, but when I'm doing a patch like this, especially one that has divided lines, I don't want to do a lot of outlining or extra stitches on top of what I've got, because I want to preserve the look, the simple look of the design behind it. So I went ahead and selected travel edge, so that gave me a nice clean line. If I unclick that travel edge, you can see that it's just not quite as clean right here as it was before. It might stitch out just really nice for you, but I picked the travel edge. And then I have a really nice edge right down here, which is what I want, because I don't want to add another line of stitching. Although you could add a satin line, you could add a bean stitch or any other type of line right there just to delineate that area if you wanted. Let's zoom out a little bit and see what it looks like from here. That looks really great. Let's add our patch border. If I have these instances that I did at the top, and I'm going to take one of them and I'm going to use this new edge stitch patch overlock mirroring button that's up here by my stitch types, and I'm just going to click it and watch what happens. Ta-da! We've applied a patch border. Now remember I told you that my lettering is, you don't want it to be too close, so you can see my hello lettering is actually a little bit close to the top of that, and I don't want it that big. So I'm going to actually, am I going to shrink it like that? I think I'm going to shrink it just like this. I want the hello to be pretty dramatic, so I need it to be big enough, but you can see when I did that, now we got some distortion in our stitches. And this is why True Type fonts are a little bit picky. I just did that it did all kinds of things when I did that. And you never know what you're going to get. So you might need to redigitize it or redraw it. I'm going to play with my nodes and get them into the right spot and see if we can fix some of this real quick. And you can just watch me do that. It may be as simple as just moving a couple, or there may be a whole lot that we have to do, or we might need to break the whole thing entirely apart and start over. That's quite a possibility. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to break this apart. So I'm going to break this right here apart. Oops, let's play with that. Let me have that one. let's get those nodes and break that off. So now I have 3 different sections. Let's apply satin stitches there, and that's much better. Oh, so much better. I do want that H to look like that's behind it, so I need to make sure that that line is nice and straight. And I'm just talking through the parts that I do when I'm doing this. So this little H here on the side, if we wanted to, I might break this open. Let's do this connect. No, it opened up. Okay, then that's good. I was going to say what you could do is you would connect the whole to each other. That one, that node is twisted, so let's get rid of it completely. There we go. And I'm going to give this little bit around this just by moving this up a bit. There we go. Now we've got some body to that curl right there. And then we'll have to go through and connect the starts and stops so that this runs nicely all together. So that one starts there. This one goes next. So let's move the bar earlier to it. Then we need this one to run, and I need it to start here and stop closer to here. That E got distorted, so let's fix that E. It may be that we just need to add some of those nodes back from when we reconstructed it. So let's add those nodes and give it a little bit more to work with there. That's not perfect. There we go. There we go. So there's just some things to do. You could further mess with it by putting stitch angles in here. That would help. Or you could just simply redraw it. And like I said, most of the time when you bring a true type font in, these nodes are hard cusps. And sometimes it's just easier to draw new curves from scratch instead of fixing all of the nodes that come in. Because they don't always come in as smooth nodes. They come in as cusp nodes, which you can see only let you play with one side at a time instead of working with the whole curve. See how that when it's a curve, I can work with the whole curve and not just one side at a time. And that's just a function of, it being a Bezier, a node tool. If you're used to working with nodes, then you know what I mean. It's just something to get used to. That node has a little, I can already tell that's in a, can you see it right here? They're at little angles. That's how I can tell that they're not curved nodes, they're cusp nodes, because those nodes come in as little angular pieces. That one too, because those are not going straight across from each other. When they're curved nodes, the shape is smoother. You may want a cusp node if you have a corner or an edge that needs to be straight, but most of the times I find when I'm doing especially script lettering or smooth designs, I want most of my nodes to be curved nodes so that I have nice continuous curves where the line travels through the node all the way, and I can affect it on both sides. When I mess with one side of the node, it actually affects the entire curve, and that's what I want to do. I want to control the whole line so that I get smoothness all the way through the shape. Okay. We need to fix the starts and stops on that so that we don't have so many jump stitches, and I'm going to double check where all these starts and stops happen so that they blend in together. And sorry, I had to stop for good night hugs and kisses. We were messing with the nodes on these letters, so I looked at them a little bit bigger, and I want this E to be a little bit fatter right there just to kind of match what everybody else is doing. And I'm going to play with those handles on these nodes. Zoom in a little bit so I can pick the right handle. There we go. Get that a little bit of width right there. Okay. So then I would go through each one. See, these nodes are just kind of, this is the danger of a true type font. They're just not predictable. And so sometimes it's just easier to digitize it yourself. And then also too, you can see when I move these nodes, these are all overlapping. So there's ways to digitize those and make this a little bit cleaner, but I just want to show you what I'm doing for basic purposes. Of course, you could always use a purchase font you got from somewhere else, or you could use one of the built-in fonts with Brilliance Essentials, because those are lovely as well. Anyway, so there we go. Now, so we squished it a little bit so that it fit in this area. We have the My Name Is right here. We have our border here, and all these steps are kind of out of order. So I left this one here. We don't need it at all, so I'm going to delete it. So let's see what we've got. We've got some objects. We've got our placement stitch. We've got our fill stitch. We've got our patch border. We've got the lettering for hello, and we've got the lettering for My Name Is. Since you're making a patch and you're not going to cut out or anything until you get it out of your hoop, this is all just fine. I like to have all of my objects in one instance on my object tree. And so there's a couple of things that we need to do. We need to combine designs first. So I'm going to select everything, create design, combine designs, and that gets all of them into one object except for My Name Is. And My Name Is, I need to convert it to stitches or objects before I am able to get it into that lettering set. So now it's in, and the way I do that is I click on with my right mouse button and convert it to objects. And then I can get rid of these. These won't show up in your stitching, but there are a lot of objects on my object window, and so I don't want them there, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them. So I'm just going to delete them. And that way there are a lot less pieces. Now I'm just left with the parts of the letters, and I could manipulate those further if I wanted to also. But what I can do for sure is create design, and I can combine designs, and now I only have one object here in my object tree. Or one, I have lots of objects. I have one design in my object window and not multiple designs. Okay. Now I can mess with the order. I could go ahead and put my name in here too. So you could use, you could bring in a true type font that you want for your name. You could use one of your purchase fonts. You could use some of the letters from Brilliance. There's lots of ways you can get a font in here for your name. For just the sake of simplicity, let's use one of the fonts that's already digitized and in Brilliance because they are lovely, and let's put your name in here. Now, this name is not, it's a little too big like this, so we need to grab one of these corners, shrink it to the right size, put it in the right place by moving it and scooting it around. And then I'm going to do something even further. I'm going to pull them together and scoot them so that they are touching. One of the things that really kind of, I don't want to say it makes my skin crawl, but it kind of makes me twitchy is when I see embroidery where the letters are all, the cursive letters are not touching each other. And with Brilliance, we have really nice tools so that we can pull them and stretch them and do all kinds of neat things with them. I'm actually going to take a little bit of the slant off too. There we go, because I want that S to look a certain way. And I can do it. I move all of them and unslant them a little bit. Let's get them a little bit closer again. There we go. And we need this S to be here. And we need, I'm just going to scoot them. You can use the arrow keys or you can use your mouse. The reason that you can see that some of the stitches are falling off is because the other letters are on top of them right now. But as soon as I move them away, see, they'll repopulate with stitches, just depending on where you have them touching. I have mine set so that mine aren't satin stitches on top of satin stitches, so they're all going to be nice and flowy. And I'm going to conserve stitches and not have a bunch of things piled up on each other because I don't like that. But I also want all of my letters to touch each other as well so that they flow just like you were writing it. There we go. Let's move the S just a little bit more. There we go. And I'm actually going to tilt that S just a bit, just to give him a little bit more kick. Okay, I like that. Again, that came in as purple. So on my computer, I'm going to change it to ice cord. And I'm going to change the color to blue. And you can leave it like that. You could change, now it is still part of the object window, and it will stitch on top of everything else. Since it's not overlapping any stitches, I'm not going to do anything else. This is fine with me. I do want my patch border to stitch last though. So what I'm going to do is take my patch border, grab it. I'm going to move it all the way down to the end. Move last. And I'm actually going to put it after the letter so it becomes a new object. And that's totally fine with me for this. What I want to show you is how this stitches out all together. So I'm going to run the stitch simulator up at the top, and we'll see all the steps happen. So we've got our placement stitch, which tells us where to cover on the stabilizer with our fabric. Then we've got our patch fill for the top area that says my name is. Then we've got our hello lettering, which you can use as a true type font, or you can use something else. And then we have the name that you added. You could add your own name there, again with any font or with something from Brilliance, from Essentials, or something you digitize yourself, or a purchase font you get somewhere else. And let me show you what else is happening. The next thing we have is a stitch that is going to delineate the edge of the patch underneath. Now it's going to stop because this is in a different color, and I don't know if you can see, this functions as an applique. So we have the applique position for the patch, and your machine will stop, and you can actually go ahead and, if you need to, you can trim around this area. If you didn't use a pre-cut patch that you already had the shape for, you could stop your machine, take it off the hoop, but not take it out of the hoop, and then trim around your placement stitch there. That way you have a nice clean border when it's time to stitch the next step on. Let me show you how this mirroring edge, this patch edge, looks when it's stitching out. This is so cool. So it's going to run it a little bit on the inside, and then it's going to run a nice zigzag covering up that edge. Do you see how it's catching that edge? So when you're trimming, you want to trim right up to the edge, and it's going to give a nice thick zigzag, and then it's going to start that special patch look stitch, which is just a fixed width, and it looks great all the way around. And voila, your patch is done. That's it. At this point, you would take it out of off your machine, take it out of your hoop, trim it around really well. If you're using clear stabilizer for patches or badges, or some sort of twill, you could use a hot knife to seal the edges, or however you finish your edges of your patches. But it's just a lovely border, and I just wanted to show you because I had so much fun playing with it, and I thought you might like that too. So thanks for watching. Go make yourself some name tags, and quit using those plastic ones or the sticky ones. They're so gross. Make yourself a nice one that you can wear when you go out, when we finally get to see people again in person. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later. You can leave me a comment if you have any questions. There are more than one way, lots of different ways to make a patch. So I hope that this way was enlightening for you. If your way is working for you and it's working great, then keep on doing that by all means. But if you've just gotten this update for Brilliance with this patch border, give it a try. Let me know what you think. I think it's a lot of fun.